Okay, assuming that you've satisfied the salary test, now you need to satisfy the duties test for the exemption classification. So under the executive exemption, there are 5 criteria that must be met. 1, duties and responsibilities involve the management of the enterprise in which the employee is employed or of a customarily recognized department or subdivision thereof. 2, customarily and regularly directs the work of 2 or more employees therein. 3, has the authority to hire or fire other employees or whose suggestions and recommendations as to the hiring or firing and as to the advancement and promotion or any other change of status of other employees will be given particular weight. 4, customarily and regularly exercises discretion and independent judgment. And the 5th criteria is that he or she is primarily engaged in duties which meet the test of the exemption. But when we say primarily engaged in duties which meet the test of the exemption, primarily means more than 1/2 of the employee's work time. In other words, more than 50%, even if that more is 50.1%. Exempt work shall include, for example, all work that is directly and closely related to exempt work and work which is properly viewed as a means for carrying out exempt functions. It can be tricky for certain roles like managers because these roles typically perform both non-exempt and exempt duties. Things to consider, of course, is that you need to make sure that the exempt duties are more than 50% of the time being spent, and that's typically viewed in a work week. So you don't need to micromanage every minute or each day, but in the aggregate for a work week is how that's going to be viewed. Work performed by a non-exempt employee is generally non-exempt work when performed by the supervisor. Regulations do not recognize hybrid activities, activities having both exempt and non-exempt aspects. Identical tasks may be exempt or non-exempt, depending on the manager's purpose in engaging in the task or the task's role in the work of the organization. In large retail establishments, when certain tasks are customarily assigned to non-exempt employees, the performance of that work by a manager is non-exempt. So those are just some factors to consider when determining whether or not the work being performed is exempt or non-exempt. So here's just an example of some duties that are characterized as exempt versus non-exempt for the restaurant space. In that particular industry, exempt duties may include setting and adjusting pay and work hours, interviewing, hiring, disciplining, and training employees, evaluating employee efficiency and productivity, handling employee complaints, managing safety of employees, controlling flow and distribution of merchandise, materials, and supplies, managing and directing kitchen staff. So in that same restaurant, the following duties would likely be non-exempt: inventory and replenishing stock pursuant to a set formula, cashier, taking customer orders, bussing tables, preparing food and drinks, serving and packaging food. And obviously, these are samples for that particular industry. They vary for every industry, but this hopefully gives you a sense of how they would break down and things to consider. Let's talk about the administrative exemption. The following criteria must be met to satisfy the administrative exemption. 1, duties and responsibilities involve the performance of office or non-manual work directly related to management policies or general business operations of the employer or the employer's customers. And it customarily and regularly exercises discretion and independent judgment. So in addition to those, to satisfy the administrative exemption, you must also meet one of the following criteria, of which there's 3. Either regularly and directly assists a proprietor or an employee employed in a bona fide executive or administrative capacity, or performs under only general supervision work along specialized or technical lines requiring special training, experience, or knowledge, or executes under only general supervision, special assignments, and tasks. So these 3, you don't have to satisfy all of them. You just need to satisfy at least one of them to maintain the administrative exemption. Of course, as before, the employee needs to be primarily engaged in the duties which meet the test of the exemption. So for administrative exemption, common examples of positions And again, the law does not take into account the title. They really look at the actual duties. But here are titles of employees with the assumption that these duties satisfy the exempt criteria, but typically executive and administrative assistants, tax and insurance experts, purchasing agents, personnel directors, account executives. These are just examples. And examples of exempt duties under the administrative exemption include advising management, planning, negotiating, representing the company, purchasing materials and supplies, promoting sales, researching business opportunities, analyzing business data, determining company and or personnel policies. And these are just some examples. By no stretch are these exhaustive. Last of the white collar exemptions is the professional exemption. You must meet one of the following criteria. You need to be licensed or certified by the state of California and primarily engaged in the practice of one of the following recognized professions: law, medicine, dentistry, optometry, architecture, engineering, teaching, or accounting, or primarily engaged in an occupation commonly recognized as a learned or artistic profession. Unlicensed professionals may be exempt as learned professionals. Work requiring knowledge of an advanced type in a field or science or learning, customarily acquired by a prolonged course of specialized intellectual instruction and study, as distinguished from a general academic education. That is how we look at what a learned professional is. Labor Commissioner has noted that an advanced academic degree above the bachelor level is a standard prerequisite. Artistic profession, work that is original and creative in character in a recognized field of artistic endeavor, as opposed to work which can be produced by a person endowed with general manual or intellectual ability and training, and the result of which depends primarily on the invention, imagination, or talent of the employee. And work is predominantly intellectual and varied in character, as opposed to routine, mental, manual, mechanical, or physical work, and is of such character that the output produced or the result accomplished cannot be standardized in relation to a given period of time. The Department of Labor Standards Enforcement has recognized fields include music, writing, theater, the plastic and graphic arts. These all fall under the artistic profession.